Welcome to The Women's Wisdom, our journey in emergency medicine podcast, a production of the Women in Emergency Medicine section of the American Academy of Emergency Medicine. Join Doctors Molly Estes and Liz Calhoun as they are joined by prominent women in emergency medicine and other special guests.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Women's Wisdom podcast. My name is Liz Calhoun, and I am an attending physician at Mercy Fitzgerald Hospital in Darby, Pennsylvania.
And hello, everyone. My name is Molly Estes, and I'm an attending physician at Northwestern University in Chicago, Illinois.
And today we have a very special guest, one of our Women in EM sections board members, new to us this year. Please welcome Dr. Tiffany Walker Sigal.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here with you guys today.
We're so excited to have you join us and learn more about you. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and where you grew up?
Originally, I'm from Florida, southwest coast of Florida. Grew up in Naples and ended up in North Carolina for undergrad. I took some time off between kind of undergrad and going to medical school to make sure it's what I wanted to do. Thought about being a PhD and teaching, and so ended up moving cross country and living in northern Idaho for a year, and then went back to my hometown where I taught and had the amazing opportunity to coach at my old high school and coach with my dad. So it was a super, super special 3 years coaching with him and teaching middle school science, which is an experience in and of itself. And then ended up living all over the country at various points. Back in Florida for men's school. I was in the military, so ended up in Washington, Arkansas, and then have been in Las Vegas for the last 10 years now. So the longest place I've lived as an adult. Never thought I'd call Vegas my home, but here we are.
And you fit right in with the tinsel in your hair.
Yeah, something like that. And still a shock. You get off a shift at 6 a.m. and you go into the drugstore or the grocery store and people are there gambling at 6:30 a.m. You're like, this is still surreal sometimes. That's where you live.
I want to hear more about that in a minute, but let's back all the way up because you had a very non-traditional path, and I want to hear more about multiple parts of this. Let me start by saying you taught middle school. Bless you. Middle schoolers are terrifying when you have them, let alone to have 30 of them. So let's hear more about this transitional period, and please touch on coaching with your dad. What's for it, how that was, one art.
When I was in Idaho, I wanted to see, so I think that was probably I'll get to the teaching and coaching because that was followed up with what I did in Idaho, but I wanted to see a different part of the world and a different part of the country. And everyone's like, when I tell people I moved to northern Idaho, they're like, oh, so you moved for a boy. No, I got a dog after I graduated college. I packed up my car and we moved cross country. And this was before smartphones. So I had my atlas and I had to map out my stops and then call my parents or get a calling card, right? And be like, I'm safe. I made it to 100, 500 miles I drove.
Major props to MapQuest for everybody of a generation who remembers.
Yeah. So it was such a great experience. And I ended up thinking, I'm like, I've got 2 degrees. This will be great. I'll find a job, no problem. But I quickly learned a college education doesn't necessarily set you up for a job. So I ended up working as a deli clerk and then as a teacher's aide, a reading aide, and teaching and coaching basketball, which was my kind of sport that I knew the best out in Idaho. And then an opportunity presented itself back in my hometown to teach middle school science. And then coached at my high school, and I ended up coaching volleyball, basketball with my dad, and then shot and disc. I coached the throwers, both boys and girls, in track and field. And then I got to coach, while I was doing that for 3 years, a traveling basketball team with one of my old teammates, fourth graders, and we stayed through 6th grade. So it was super fun watching those girls grow up, and I stayed enough in the community with my dad coaching to see them play high school basketball and graduate and go on to college. And now a couple of them have kids. Doesn't make me feel old at all, I promise. But yeah, it was quite the experience. And having my first classroom, not being trained as a teacher, was definitely a big learning curve, which I think, again, served me well in medicine, learning on the fly, because you're never going to know everything. And especially in emergency medicine, trying to connect with 7th graders from completely different backgrounds and walks of life than me, and family and culture, things that I were expecting. I can remember clearly having a conversation with a parent being like, they're not doing this. They're like, yeah, but in our culture, that's disrespectful. If we stare someone in the eye and look at them, that's disrespectful. Is oh, that makes a lot of sense now, right? And so understanding that things and expectations that I would have for students maybe went against what they were taught. And so finding that common ground and that middle ground to make it work. And let me tell you, seventh graders have all the hormones and all the interesting stories to keep you on your toes.
You can't see Molly and I wincing remembering our teenage years, but it's happening on camera.
Yeah.
See, I lived with two roommates, one of whom was a kindergarten teacher and one of whom taught middle school science. And I swear to God, their jobs were much, much harder than mine on the average daily basis because of these facts.
Thank goodness that people like the kindergartners, because I would go absolutely insane. I don't think I could handle that many 4 and 5-year-olds running around. Give me the hormonal seventh graders over that all day.
I don't know. I would watch the two of them have conversations back and forth and be like, I don't know how you deal with your kids, and I don't know how you deal with your kids. Remarkable similarities between the two groups, by the way.
And it's the same thing in medicine, right? Can you just some of the specialties, I couldn't imagine doing that all day, every day, but other people love it. And so I think you find that niche in your path and it makes a big difference. And then, my dad coached me when I played basketball in high school and in traveling ball growing up. And so the opportunity to go back and be his assistant was probably one of the best experiences I had ever had. And being his right-hand person, I coached the JV team and then an assistant varsity coach, and we made it to state one year. And so it was just memories that I can never replace.
That must have been just such an absolutely special time to be able to have that opportunity to work with your dad.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I played, I was the brunt of all of the team's issues, whether they were mine or not. I took all of it. In fact, my nickname was Damn It Tiff, not Tiffany, not Tiff. It was the first name was Damn It, middle name was Tiff. And even my teachers had called me that before. They're like, Damn It Tiff. And I was like, I got it. Everyone knew. And it was said with love sometimes. I knew it was meant with love. How's that? Even if it wasn't said with it. So it was fun being on the other side a little bit. And I knew how to keep them in check every now and then.
So you got to this place in your life where a lot of people would have just stopped. You are back in your hometown, you have a stable job, you're working with an old friend and your dad. For some people, this is the culmination of a lifetime of education. What made you push yourself for more?
So I had went into undergrad thinking I was going to go into medicine and took the time as I took the MCAT my 4th year and was getting ready to apply. And I was like, am I doing this because I said this is what I was going to do? Or am I doing this because it's something that I want to do and that I'm passionate about and think that I can do? And so those 4 years that I took off between really gave me time to explore. Do I want to go back and be a professor? Do I want to go teach at a college level? Do I want to do this? What do I want to do? And so I had shadowed with an orthopedic in undergrad and then reshadowed with him and with one of his colleagues while I was teaching and coaching just to get my feet back into medicine and see. And I realized there's a lot of similarities in medicine, right, to being a teacher. A good doctor teaches their patients, right, and helps them understand things. And I think that was a connection that I maybe had missed before. In having moved cross country and having lived in a bunch of different places and worked with a bunch of different people, I really liked that connection. I felt that I had the ability to be a doctor too, right? I had that capacity to learn that and do that. And I thought that after taking that time off, I thought that was something that I did want to go back to, and that would combine a lot of the things that I loved in life, that lifelong learning, right? As a doctor, you're always learning. There's nothing, you can't stop. You can't be stagnant. And in teaching and in coaching, there's always things to learn, but I think not to the degree that there is in medicine. And so I think that was one of the things that made me want to go back. And unfortunately for me, the lovely timing of it is that I had taken just enough time off that my MCAT scores didn't count. As I wanted to reapply, the first time I realized my MCAT scores were not good, and I had to retake the MCAT 4 years out from undergrad, and I had taken things like organic chemistry as a freshman in college. So that was almost 7 years ago or 8 years ago that I had to fresh up on knowledge.
Oh my God. To this day, I think that is still the worst test I have ever taken in my life. Worse than STEP, worse than board certification. And to have to take it twice. I know that a lot of people out there have taken the MCAT multiple times. And every single time I hear that story, I'm like, oh, dear God, you glorious human being. I don't think I could have done it.
Yeah. And most people take it twice consecutively, not twice most of the years of half decade apart. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, definitely a non-traditional in just about everything I have done in life. But that's okay. It's good. I love it. I've embraced it. I think it's made me who I am, and I am a better person and doctor for it. So it's great. Hey.
Okay, so you get to the other side of this decision. You get to the other side of the glorious, glorious MCAT. Where does the military come into this? How in the world did you go about making that decision?
So I wanted to give back. I thought the military was a good way to do it. I ended up being an HPSP scholarship person. I investigated like options. My cousin husband, who I'm really close with, was a helicopter pilot in the Army. And I talked to him about the military, right? Like very different. Obviously, I'm not going to be a pilot, but he was in the Army and I talked to him about what it's like being an officer in the military. And he's, look, if you can, Air Force is going to be the best branch if you can get in because they take care of their people better. You're still going to sacrifice. It's still going to be, but he had a whole analogy about Marines like sleep in the water, Army officers, right? Like Army like pitch tents on the beach. Navy might get it, the Motel 6, and the Air Force, they're putting you up at the Hilton, right? That was his analogy of how they're like taking care of people.
All comments on the podcast are not condoned by the U.S. military.
But that was his analogy to be like, look, if you can, go in. And so I met with a recruiter, ended up on scholarship for HPSP. Again, I thought it would be one way to help pay for med school, which I can go into a whole nother thing. Don't ever do it for the money. It does not wash out in the end. You've got to do it because you want to give back and that you understand you end up losing a lot of control of your career to some degree. You also gain a lot from it. But yeah, I thought I want to travel. I want to see other places. It would be a good way to give back. So I went in as an HPSP scholarship.
Now, you mentioned that you didn't go straight into being an EM physician. For those of us who are not as familiar with all the different paths that military medicine can take you down, can you tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you were when you ended your military career?
I was at med school at University of Florida, and I was the only HPSP person in my class. And I think there was maybe one person above me. And again, this is a reflection where I've learned during the time, right? I didn't want to do an active duty Air Force residency. I wanted to go civilian and I wanted to move to the West. I wanted to move back to the West Coast. And so I didn't think I needed to do a rotation with them, right? I didn't think doing the interview, like going in person was a big deal because I didn't want to match with the military. I want to be deferred and go into EM and the civilian side and then go give my time back. Little did I know that if you don't do those things, you don't get ranked. And so I didn't match in the military into EM. Even though I was a strong EM candidate outside of the military, I didn't do those things that I needed to. And at the time, I blamed a lot of it on my contact with HPSP, my lack of mentorship. But really what it boils down to is I didn't take the initiative to advocate for myself and to figure out what I needed to do. Yes, would having a stronger mentor have helped? Yes, would my contact have said, if you want to match, here are the things that you need to do. And you do need to do a rotation and you do need to interview and you do need to do these things. Would that have been helpful? Sure. But ultimately, I've learned it came back to me and not being my own advocate and not understanding the process enough. So I didn't match. And I found out when I was out on the West Coast doing some interviews for regular EM, and I quickly applied to surgery programs because I then had to, if you don't match, you have to do either a transitional year or the non-categorical intern year in internal medicine or surgery. So I applied to one surgery program. I had an interview at Stanford, had to drive all the way up to Seattle right after my interview, drove all night, switched back into a suit and went up and interviewed for my one surgery program. You know how in February, wherever, March, you find out that Monday, you find out if you matched or not. I luckily matched. So I knew exactly where I was going on Monday because there was only one program that I could match into. I think they were impressed, you drove all night and you're here and you're fresh-eyed and you're talking to us. That was like, oh, you're exactly what we need in surgery, that uniqueness there. I did a surgery year. And a lot of people do their intern year and apply right away to go into their specialty that they want. But I felt that I wasn't maybe ready in the sense that I didn't do anything else to help with EM. I was still busy trying to be a surgeon. I didn't want to take the time to reapply and go on interviews during my surgery intern year. And I felt that I owed the program that I was with. It's a lot of time to take away. And we were a very small program. And I just didn't think that was the right choice for me. So I ended up was supposed to do a flight. A lot of people end up as flight docs, and I was going to go do my flight interview. And like the day before I was supposed to do my flight interview for the military, they're like, yeah, you're disqualified from flying. They didn't tell me why. And I ended up, yeah, I don't know, because I didn't even have my flight physical for them to disqualify me, but something in my history said no. So I ended up getting, and I had ranked all my places based on being a flight doc. So the Air Force told me I was going to Little Rock, Arkansas, and being a general medical officer, which means I worked in the family health clinic for 3 years in Arkansas. And that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so I was a family doc for 3 years in a clinic in Arkansas.
So before we ask the next question, which is, okay, and then how did your career segue? I do feel it necessary to give a quick public service announcement right here, which is kudos to you for saying that this was your responsibility for not advocating for yourself. From the other side of things, as a mentor advisor for medical students, I see this as a failure of mentoring and advising for you in your career. And I am truly sorry that this was your experience. Well done in getting where you are right now. If you are a medical student listening to the podcast right now and you are in the military or planning on applying to the military and you're wanting to pursue a career in emergency medicine, please make sure that you have an emergency medicine advisor who is familiar with how military match actually works. And if you don't have somebody at your institution who fills both those niches, then please contact AAEM RSA, ACOEP RSO, EMRA, the CORD Distant Advising Network. There are multiple ways where we can put you in touch with somebody who is well versed in the process because it is complicated. So,
And
with that being said,
I was going to say, also feel free to reach out to me personally. One of my best friends is an emergency medicine physician in the Army who went via HPSP. And I know she got good advising because there were about 10% of our class was military, and a good chunk of them went into EM. So there's plenty of ways. This goes back to something that Melanie and I always say. Use every connection you can find and reach out to people. Even if we don't know, we know somebody who'll get you in the right place.
And I ended up serving as a program director in the military. So I am happy if people want to reach out to me and share my contacts. I now know the process inside and out. Even if I'm removed from the military a couple of years, I still have contacted. So I am happy to help anyone and talk to people if anyone is interested or has questions. I'm a pretty open book about my experience and what it's like. And so happy to talk, even if it's not into emergency medicine, but I'm happy to talk about it with anyone.
okay, so from family medicine clinic to emergency medicine somewhere around the way to program director to you are the definition of advocating for yourself and succeeding in whatever you do. So 3 years in Little Rock, Arkansas, what happened next?
Yeah, I applied after 2 years the first time, right? Yeah, the first time, the second time. So I did a year. Again, I was learning how to be a family doctor. Let me tell you, surgery does not teach you how to be, right, manage someone's diabetes and cholesterol medicine. I got put in charge of managing the entire base's cholesterol metrics, right? And I'd go to this person and be like, hey, you need to be on this statin. And they're like, my cardiologist said I don't in town. I was like, cool. So sorry, guys, they're just going to fall out. I don't know what you want me to do about this, right? Like I can't go against cardiology.
That's great.
So I learned how to be a primary care doctor for the first year. And then I was like, all right, I'm ready. I want to do EM. I don't want clinic life. I know this is what I want. I had thought about some other things in medical school, but I am set. This is where I want to go. So I applied and I went on one of my Air Force interviews and the program director was, what have you done? Nothing in your application right now says you want to do emergency medicine. Like, why do you want to be an ER doctor? I'm like, I've done this. Here were the other things I was thinking of. I was learning how to be a surgeon. I was learning how to be a family doctor. If I'm doing a job, I want to do it right. So yeah, I put my time into what I was doing. He's like, yeah, sorry. So I didn't match again with the Air Force. So I ended up getting a job working in Northwest Arkansas as an ER doctor. They just needed a license and it was so small that they let me be a doctor there. And now looking back is like, what were they doing? I treated a stroke with like neuro rads and pushed TPA, like with no, I think, true concept of what I was doing and what I was taking care of, like a stab wound to the chest, like all these things that now when I understand, I was like managing without full training. But regardless, third time was the charm. I applied. I matched into my program in Vegas, which was a combined active duty civilian program with UNLV, and matched and moved out to Vegas. And completed residency there, was a chief resident my 3rd year, had a baby my 3rd year as chief resident, and then stayed on with the military at Nellis because I really do like academics, and stayed on as a clerkship director first, and then took over as the associate program director for the program director for the Air Force side of things, associate program director for UNLV, and stayed in that role for a couple of years, and actually stayed an extra year before my commitment was up. That small thing called COVID and the pandemic and trying to get out and find a job and consider moving was maybe not the best time to do that. And so ended up staying an extra year in the Air Force while all that kind of shook out, and had my 2nd kid while I was active duty. And when I got out, one of the other programs in town had just started up a residency. They were in year 2 going into year 3, and the regional director, I had worked with his wife. She was one of my mentors and one of my attendings at UNLV, and then we were colleagues. He kind of recruited me over to come help with the residency at Valley Health System in Vegas, and the opportunity to be part of a new program and kind of help be a resident advocate and help shape a program was something that I couldn't pass up. And so got out of the Air Force and moved over here, and have been here for the last going on year 3, I think now. Yeah. Like I said, nothing in my life has been straightforward.
Literally speechless. Like, just literally speechless over here. I don't even know where to start.
Same. You have had more twists and turns, but come out on top with such aplomb and grace. It's remarkable. But at the same time, I am wondering where you found time for balancing yourself, because your career has been anything but balanced and a smooth ride.
I think that's something that I don't know that I've always had. And so I think one of the things that has helped keep that balance is partner in my boyfriend and then husband while I was doing my surgery residency, and then in the Air Force for the first part of it, and then residency in EM is non-military. And when I was in Arkansas, while I'm doing all this medicine stuff, a lot of my friends weren't military or medicine. So I ended up like having that outlet where it was other things and it wasn't medicine 24/7. So while I was working really hard in my career, my social time was relieved and away from that. And so I think that has helped. Been one of the things over the last several years I've gotten back into like my fitness journey. I used to lift and work out and do all that, especially with my dad, and that has gone by the wayside. But with kids being in school, I've refocused that as my priority for what I do in my off time. We read enough literature that I've started reading fun books, and I read for 20 minutes, a half hour every night, and just escape into ridiculous adventures and fantasy and mystery, and kind of use that as an escape too to keep myself balanced. And so I think those little points in really trying to, when I'm not teaching or working on academics or being an ER doctor, really trying to put that part. And that's a nice thing, right? I think for me, I can separate that and leave that over in this bucket over here, and then focus on my kids or whatever other activity I'm doing, and make that and really try and fill, even if it's a limited time, really focus on that limited time outside of medicine and getting the most out of that time. I did read the Mistborn series. My brother-in-law recommended it. It's a fantasy, and I read those 3, and I thought it was really good. Because now there's a whole world of 30 more books that you can go investigate. I was like, great, just what I need.
So this is the exact same conversation I had with my partner as well, because I read the Mistborn series, the original, the 3
Yeah. Yep.
years ago, and then he told me, you realize it's part of this entire universe. I was like, no, actually I didn't. So
Yeah.
the Stormlight Chronicles are actually quite good as well. So
Okay.
and those.
Excellent. I'll add it to my list.
So to ask a perhaps slightly unfair question, only because to boil all of your life experience down to the top 2 or 3 life lessons is absurd. But if you're reflecting back on the huge variety of life experiences that you have had, and you're looking at all of them and the ones that have actually given you skills and abilities to be able to handle a complex and busy daily life with that grace and aplomb that Liz said that you possess, which is very evident, what would you say the top 2 or 3 things that you've learned along the way that help you in your daily life? What would those top 2 or 3 things be?
I think, right, like I guess I've always had clear goals, but sometimes maybe they've been pushed back. But I think perseverance, right? And like really understanding where you want to get to and not taking no for an answer, right? I think and truly those failures I think I've been able to step back and take a look at them and while don't get me wrong, they sucked at the time. Like they were horrible and I hated every single one of them. And we're all high. I don't know anyone in medicine who's not high achieving and has maybe a touch of perfectionism in them, right? We have people's lives in our hands, right? We all make mistakes, but like they can be catastrophic when you do. So making mistakes and failing isn't something I don't know that anyone loves, but not letting that get me down, at least, sure, take your time, lick your wounds, but then look and reflect and see like, how can I grow? What can I learn from it? How can I do better the next time? I think was some of the things, and that's where I've grown the most as a person is in those failures and in that reflection from those failures or when things didn't go according to plan and having to reassess. And so like when you take some of those big life twists and turns that I wasn't expecting, and then like some of those things ended up being the best things that ever happened to me, right? Like I would have never lived in Arkansas. Like it was not on my radar of a place to go. But I've met some of the best people in my entire life there and have friends for life from that experience and lived in a part of the country and went canoeing down waters and rivers and got into things that I never would have done otherwise. And so I think being able to see the positives from the failures and being able to figure out how to grow from them. And that helps in everyday life, right? Because nothing in your day goes perfect, right? Whether it's the kid that wakes up at 4 a.m. and you're like, I really needed that extra hour of sleep. Okay, this is what I got to do, right? Like, how am I going to make it through now? How do I have to adjust? And so I think even those little things, understanding that, okay, great. Yeah, it stinks right now, but now we got an extra an extra hour to snuggle, right? And trying to find those little positives in the things that aren't great can be super helpful.
So you mentioned 4 a.m. snuggle time, and although that sounds immediately Hallmark picturesque, that is wrapped up in a milieu of nuances of family life. And so tell us more about your family.
I have 2 boys, 7.5 and 4,
Half
who
is important at age 7. The half
correct.
is very important.
Closer to 8 than 7. So on the back side of it, which they started school yesterday, which I am super happy about. I think they are too, because 2 brothers together all summer were about ready to kill each other if they didn't get some separation. So I think everyone is happy they're back in school for a little bit. But yeah, they are probably the biggest joy in my life. They keep me on my toes always. They definitely add a whole nother facet to life and more challenges, but I love spending time with them and they're both unique in their own way, which is great. And I think having a family and having kids was something that was important to me and something that took a lot of work to happen in life. It's another one of those where life and your plans don't always come together, right? Like I ended up having a miscarriage in my first pregnancy and then I had everyone's, oh, you waited so long between kids. I was like, I don't know that I waited or nature waited or life waited, right? Like I had several miscarriages in between and you can lay your plans, but life has a way of not. And everyone's, oh, so you're going to have more? I'm like, not in my cards, but the second you say nothing's going to happen, something always does. So I always give that very vague response of not in my plans, but the second you say absolutely not, who knows what happens. But yeah, I am very happy and very lucky to have my 2 healthy boys to share life with.
Clearly an entire conversation in of itself, because if I remember correctly, you said that you had your oldest while you were a chief resident, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And you've mentioned that you struggled with your pregnancies and had multiple miscarriages. And so there's clearly an entire whole other conversation wrapped up in the struggles that go into women's reproductive health and being busy and stressed and finding time that is dedicated to the important pursuit of family and this dream and desire of yours and everything else that goes into that. What would you like to share to the women listening out there who might be in the same place, or the men partners who are listening out there who might have a partner who is in that same place?
I think when you talk to students or when you talk to like residents, when's a good time to have a family, right? And if you're in medicine and you're in a career, there's never a good time, right? There's just not. I think probably in life, there's never a good time. It uproots and changes everything. So you've got to, and I think that's something that I've learned along the way, right? You've got to do what's right for you and do what's right for your family. And whenever that is, hopefully you're in a program or surrounded by people who will support you. And if not, then you've got to go find those people. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can tell people is to be an advocate for yourself and for your health and for your family and don't let someone tell you when to or not to do something. Like my program director in the Air Force, when I was pregnant with my kid, when I finally told them, they're like, oh, you should just rearrange your schedule so you don't have to take leave. I'm like, no, the military gives me 12-week paid maternity leave. I'm taking it. He's, but you're not going to graduate on time. I'm like, who cares? I'm like, no one's going to care if I graduate in September versus June. No one will care. I was luckily far enough in my life and my career to be able to be like, no, you're wrong, and I'm going to do this. Those 3 months are something, those 12 weeks is something you'll never get back in life. And so I think making sure that you're an advocate for yourself, whether it's early in your pregnancy and you're in emergency medicine, and we know night shift can be linked to increasing miscarriages. So talking to your program director early and saying, hey, look, I've struggled. Can you take me off night shift for these couple of weeks? I can go second semester and I can work more. Figuring out how you can advocate for yourself and still meet your responsibilities, right? And I think that's super important in medicine in general. We're terrible at taking care of ourselves, and we're terrible at supporting people taking care of themselves, right? Like I feel is a profession overall. And I think that's something that we can do better as colleagues, and we can do better as leadership and just in general, right? Supporting each other and supporting each other's ability to look out for our health and look out for our family or your friends, right? It doesn't even have to be your kids. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your friend, but giving people that ability to support their network in life, and not having to sacrifice that.
And a huge plug for the Women in Emergency Medicine section of AAEM and multiple other women's organizations nationwide who have taken a very firm stance on advocating for our right to advocate for ourselves and our health when it comes to these issues, and our deep gratitude to the AAEM board for supporting us in that position.
Yes. And a couple of plugs for the Women AEM section and AAEM itself. AAEM does have a position statement regarding pregnancy and shift work for emergency physicians, so that can be found on AAEM's website. And personal reproductive health is actually one of my particular passions. So over the next few years, you're going to see some new webinars and other things coming out of the Women in EM section for everyone to start talking more about their personal experiences with their own reproductive health. That being said, since that's my personal project for the next few years, and Tiffany is one of our newest board members, we're hoping you'll tell us a little bit more about why you joined the Women in EM board and what your personal goals are for your time with us.
I was looking at a way to get more involved, and I thought the Women in EM and AEM in general, I love how they support the physician. And I think that's at the heart of what they want to do is support the physician. And I think the work that you guys have done and the work that continue to do on supporting reproductive health for women, there's so many ways you can go in emergency medicine, right? So many things you can do with your career. And I think that's one of the things besides education. Where do I want to make my niche? Where do I want to find my passion? And I ended up doing a bridge fellowship, reproductive health fellowship this past year. And I think the women's healthcare and women's care in the ER is where I really want to continue. And I've started and want to continue to push advocacy, whether it's how we take care of women who come in, right? Everyone's, oh, it's an OBGYN's job to deal with miscarriages. But what happens when you first get pregnant, right? You don't see your OBGYN until you're 12 weeks, maybe, if you're lucky, right? And so all those early pregnancy issues, right? All those early reproductive issues end up in our emergency department. Where does someone go if they've been assaulted? They come to the ER. And how do we need to handle that? And so I think where I'd really like to continue to work on is creating education and information for all the other ER doctors out there about how to handle that. What are the options? How can you help women who come in with these scenarios and these situations, and how can we best serve them rather than being like, oh, shucks, you're having a miscarriage. So sad, too bad. Go see your OB, when you know that's not going to happen. There's more that we can do for them. There's more that we can offer them.
It sounds incredible, and definitely an area that is very much needed, not only at this time in our nation, more so than ever before, but one that has gone largely unrecognized and unspoken of in many of the years prior to this time.
Agreed. We're really looking forward to having you for the next year and hopefully several years to come, and supporting you in this endeavor to reach a much broader audience than we could have otherwise.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure talking with both of you.
It was our pleasure entirely. And thank you to all of our listeners out there for joining us for this conversation on the Women's Wisdom Podcast. We will catch you on the next one. Take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this podcast from the American Academy of Emergency Medicine. AAEM is a nonprofit professional association of over 8,000 emergency physicians dedicated to board certification and democratic group practice. For more information about AAEM, visit our website at www.aaem.org.